We're going to talk about the social work profession. And I am so glad that we have Laura Groshong with us to do this. She has a wealth of experience. She's a licensed clinical social worker, and she's been in clinical practice for the past 43 years. She also was a registered lobbyist in Washington for 5 mental health organizations for 25 years. She's been the director of policy and practice for the Clinical Social Work Association nationally since 2006, and through the Mental Health Liaison Group, worked on the passage of the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equality Act of 2008, the Affordable Care Act, and many other pieces of legislation that support and benefit LCSWs. Laura is a dynamic and engaging speaker, has written and lectured extensively on clinical and legislative issues around the country. So Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and just to start, like in terms of social work, in the mental health field, there's a lot of different mental health practitioner types. So social work specifically, what are some distinguishing aspects of the social work profession?
Well, if we're talking about the field of mental health, we're actually talking about clinical social work. Clinical social work is the branch of social work, which is a huge field and has many, many ways of the principles are used to help social justice issues, to help with policy. But if we're talking about doing mental health treatment, we're talking about clinical social work. And the major premise of clinical social workers who provide mental health treatment is that they want to look at the holistic view of the person. It's a concept that's called person in environment, and that systemic view is unique to clinical social work. The ways that we practice have some overlap with other disciplines that provide mental health treatment, such as psychology or counselors or marriage and family therapists or even psychiatrists. And we use the same codes, we use the same principles in terms of how we diagnose people and how we provide psychotherapy. But the underlying premise of how we understand people is this view of people in a holistic way.
Yeah, and that's really helpful, especially as of late. There's been a lot of equity issues and disparities, and the systemic issues that we have. Addressing those is so important, and I know social workers play a big part in doing that. And so where does
if I could just make a comment about the issues that we're facing with diversity and equity and inclusion, that is an part of social work, the whole field that we apply to the mental health treatment we do with other with people of all people, regardless of what their race or their beliefs are. And that is a crucial part of being a clinical social worker.
Yeah, and social workers are also very aware of care coordination. Like they play a big part in care coordination in healthcare organizations, which is really critical. So where does your passion come from for social work specifically? I mean, you could have chose from any of these, several professions, but you chose social work, and you've been a huge part of it. You didn't just, let's say you've done a lot. So where did your passion, and which takes a lot of time and work and dedication and pushing against, against well-established, things. So yeah, where does that passion come from?
Well, some people would say that and this is something my patients actually tell me, that I am very persevering. When when I commit to something, I don't give up. And I think that would have been true no matter what field I went into. But when I discovered social work in general, my first job was actually working with foster kids in Connecticut. And it was, I was at a point in my life, I was much, much younger, where I was looking for a job and I thought I would try this. And I fell in love with it. And then I decided I wanted to do more of the mental health work that I gradually got training for and then became a private practitioner doing mental health treatment. So I guess I should thank my parents for having the passion and the drive that I do. But I can't say it's, I don't know where it comes from otherwise.
Yeah, but you've also been a real agent of change, being a lobbyist. What got you involved in that?
Well, when I went to the University of Chicago School of Social Work Administration, the way I was trained was clinical social workers have two missions. One is to provide mental health treatment, and one is to do advocacy. And that if you want to be a clinical social worker, you really have to fulfill both of those missions. And so I took that to heart, and I've tried to build my career around both those missions. And for a while, I was just doing the clinical part. And then I started to feel guilty that I wasn't fulfilling my mission on advocacy, and looked for ways to contribute in that regard.
Yeah, and then the Clinical Social Work Association plays a big part in that. So can you tell us a little bit about the Clinical Social Work Association, what your role is, and what their mission is?
Sure. The Clinical Social Work Association, the national organization, we have 16 branches in states. They're called societies that are affiliated with the Clinical Social Work Association. We also have members who are individual members if they don't have a clinical society. And there are about 250,000 clinical social workers in the country. And we represent a very big chunk of those 250,000. And we advocate for the understanding, educating people about clinical social work. It's that's a big part of our mission. And we provide training for clinical social workers, and just advocate at the national level for the legislation that will support clinical social work practice.
Mm-hmm.
And as some of the things you mentioned, we've had some success.
Yeah, yeah. So you have NSAW, National Association of Social Work, which is more general, broad, right, in the social work profession, and then the Clinical Social Work Association, which has to do with the mental health, the clinical social work.
Right, and I need to, on behalf of my good friends at NASW, it's NASW.
Yeah. Did I not say that?
You said NSAW.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah.
It's fine. That is an organization that has a much broader mission than Clinical Social Work Association, but we work together on many things.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm just finishing a project with NASW where we're writing a 100-page manual for doing private practice in clinical social work.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that would be really helpful. And then there's new work on the Interstate Licensure Compact for social workers, which has been, people have been wanting that for a long time. I know I've been keeping an eye on that. So can you tell us, where that started and where you are now with it, how you can use help with helping to get this, passed throughout the states?
Well, it's kind of amazing to me that we have been able to make some headway on this issue. Right now, you can't treat somebody in a state where you're not licensed if you're a clinical social worker. And that's true for most mental health professions. And this has been a huge problem, especially as we have gotten through the pandemic. People are doing almost all their work virtually, and that makes it possible to treat people anywhere in the country. But this problem of not being licensed, in every state has its own license, and every jurisdiction, including District of Columbia. And so it's not feasible to get licensed in every state. Every state has different, slightly different criteria for being licensed there. You'd have to pay a fee. And so it's just been a real barrier to treating people across the country. So a compact is what provides a floor for any state that agrees to the terms of the compact, that you can take your license and use it in any other state that is part of the compact without getting licensed all over again. So that's the basic premise. This is actually being funded by the Department of Defense. And they wanted to get this going because they have military spouses who are clinical social workers that need to deploy with their spouse to other places. And then they have to get licensed all over again. So that was the original premise, but then they decided to expand it and make it for all clinical social workers. We'll be working with the Council of State Governments, which has great expertise. In fact, I'll have a meeting with them later today in setting up compacts like this. And it'll be a 2 to 3 year project, but I think it's well worth the effort.
Yeah, most definitely. It's very much needed. That's one of the struggles with the way that our law is set up, right? With got the federal government and state government, and the state government has that authority to, prohibit services through licensure law to protect the public, but then it has its challenges, its restrictions, and it's been a real dilemma for people. So as you're listening to this, you probably know situations, right? Continuity of care, if you want to continue with the client who goes out of state for a day, right?
Exactly.
Or working with couples who are in different states, or you have a treatment program, and then after they're discharged from your program, they go back home to a different state. I mean, there's so many situations where this is really important. So I really appreciate your work, because someone has to pick up the torch and someone has to move forward and push through and to get it done. So what is it that other clinicians can do to help with these efforts for the compact?
Well, First, I would encourage all clinical social workers to join the Clinical Social Work Association, because we'll need all the help we can get in terms of representing the profession. And we're going to have a lot of information as this project proceeds on our website, so people can educate themselves that way. And just let me know if people have questions. I'm happy to provide information if this is something that people want to get involved in.
Great, great. Yeah. And if they have a, local chapter, local association, making sure that people are-
Society, right.
yeah, the society, making sure that they're well aware of it, which they probably are. And then would it be at some point their state legislators?
That will be down the road.
Yeah.
We have to develop the compact before we can take it to the legislators.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So
Yeah.
doing research, then we'll be doing development, then we'll take it.
Yeah, quite a process. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for all the work that you do, all that you have done. And yeah, it's very valuable. There'd be a lot more work done if there was more people like you. All that
You are very kind. Thank you, Ray. Thank you for having me.